Thanks, Glenn. I'm Bill Alcoholic. Hey, everybody. First, I want to give a shout out to Glenn. I had texted him, I don't know, a couple months ago saying if you ever run into a snag getting a speaker, I know you haven't heard me tell my story, but I've done it 8 or 9 times, and feel free to ask me. And I don't know if he believed me or not, or I may be plan G. He's already asked like 6 other people to do it today, but I appreciate his leap of faith. I had done a similar thing in a group I attended regularly, getting speakers once a month, not every week. And after about 1.5 years, I was damn tired of that, and I wanted all these people in the meeting. Oh, Bill, it's so great you do this, so great you do this, but nobody got off their ass to take my place, so it ended. But I can't imagine all the work that Glenn does for this. So I really appreciate it, Glenn. Maybe a couple of caveats or warnings. AA has kept me sober. I have a little app that I rarely use, but it's called Days Since. There's an app for everything, right? That counts your days in sobriety. And mine's coming up on about 13,000 days. Having said that, I want to make the claim that I know very little, if anything. I sometimes mistakenly have the opinion that I know stuff. But I'm pretty clear that I really don't know how AA works after almost 13,000 days doing this. So if you're looking for an expert, you've come to the wrong meeting. And I like to put it the way I did, that AA has kept me sober. I don't like to say I've been sober X amount of time. To me, that sort of implies I've had a lot to do with it. And I don't believe I have. I've done a few things over that period of time that apparently have kept me away from drinking so far. But some have even accused me of practicing AA light, that I don't really work the program very much. They have a right to their opinion. That's all I'll say about that. I've been accused of having a dry sense of humor. So if anybody has a problem with that, tough duty balls. I probably don't need to say this, but because I think we all probably are clear about it. But anything I say today is my truth at this moment. It's not the truth. I don't know what the truth is. I don't speak for AA or anybody else. And my truth may be your falsity, and that's okay. And just a few things about me before I get into the story. I have been elected the group curmudgeon on 2 groups that I've gone to for quite a while, uncontested. We don't even have an election. I've been accused of, so I get grumpy a lot. But I've also been accused of being a curmudgeon with a heart, somebody likes to call me a Tootsie Roll Pop, hard on the outside, soft on the inside. And one other person who knew me quite well when I was working with her said I was a teddy bear with porcupine needles. She actually went to the Atlanta Zoo and got real porcupine needles and bought a teddy bear and gave it to me. So anyway, whatever that has to do with anything. If any of you are multitasking on this meeting and think you're good at it and really don't want to listen to me that closely, executive summary of my story is like hundreds, if not thousands, I've heard, and you may have too. It can be depicted by a big V. So starting out drinking was nice, real nice. It was up there on the left side top of the V. And gradually, but relentlessly over time, it went down that left side of the V, where drinking became a problem. It became more of a problem. It became a more serious problem. And at the bottom, I hit a bottom, a sufficient bottom for me to actually be hurting enough and miserable enough to show up to AA. Uh, in no way did I come here on the wings of victory or a soft landing, and it wasn't even my idea. I can get to that in a little bit. And then in sobriety, I'd say the first, in my case, maybe 6 months uh, were very difficult. I struggled a lot with a lot of things. I'll get into some details on that. But gradually over time, I'm on the right side of the V now. Things got better and better to where they are today, where I'm more or less on the top of that right side of the V. Um, I was born into a privileged situation, so of course I had nothing to do with that. When I say privileged, I was born 5 years after World War II in the United States, and I was a male and a white guy. Didn't really get much better than that. So just from that standpoint, I had no business really complaining about anything, but I have and I still do. My family of origin, neither of my parents were drunks. Uh, they had alcohol in the house, but the only time I can remember them drinking at all, was when other family members were over for a holiday or something like that, and they were sippers. They sipped drinks, just little sips, maybe once every 5 minutes or something like that. Of course, that wasn't me. Um, and other members of my extended family, as far as I could tell, were not alcoholics at all. Alcohol was never even talked about or mentioned in any way, shape, or form. My first drinks, like a lot of people, were in high school. I didn't really fall in love with it. I've heard a lot of people over my time here say they loved it from the first gulp or sip. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. I certainly didn't like the taste, never liked the taste. And I think those first few times, of course, I overdid it. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how much to drink. My peers didn't either, and had a hangover and cotton mouth the next morning. But anyway, after high school, I was privileged enough to go to that institution known for hedonism, sloth, and self-absorption called a university. Probably no accident that I worked in one for 26 years, but and this was in the late 60s. And the place I went to with the people I hung out with, we didn't really drink that much alcohol. I beg the indulgence of the purists here, and I'll try to stick to singleness of purpose, but it's part of my story, other chemicals. And I had the experience with marijuana that I've heard a lot of people say they had with alcohol. I fell in love with it. I used it recreationally throughout my college years and beyond. I may be in denial about this, but I don't think I ever got in trouble with it. It didn't get in the way of performing in school adequately, relationships, anything like that. My first job after college, I ran a counseling program, or it ran me really, in a public high school where I was sort of like the Welcome Back Kotter character. I know I'm dating myself, but where I got all the kids that had one problem or another, and some of those kids had alcohol as a problem. Others had other drugs as a problem, bad home life, whatever. And I remember I had a poster in my office, and it had white powder stuff. It had glasses with brown liquid in them. It had a wine bottle, I think. It had beer cans. And it simply said, alcohol is a drug. Now, at that point, little did I know what was in store for me as far as alcohol. But I thought, well, this might help some of these kids realize if they're into the booze, that too is a drug and you can get in trouble with it. Um, the rest of my 20s, I had few problems with alcohol. So I had about 10 years of good drinking, periodic hangovers, which weren't uh, obviously an obstacle for me or a sign that maybe I should take a look at my drinking. Uh, there was one incident. Uh, the best friend I had at the time was from Miami, and I was raised in Chicago. I haven't grown up yet, still, but anyway, there was a Monday night football game between the Miami Dolphins and Chicago Bears, and we had arranged for him to come over and we'd watch the game together. And I had started drinking without him, and of course I overdid it and passed out. I think the game started at like 7 at night or something. And the next thing I know, I hear this pounding on the front door and him yelling my name and are you there? And I sort of woke up with that feeling of, oh God, what did I do? And I don't want to watch the game with him. I'm too screwed up. And went back to sleep. And I thought, well, I just overdid it. I didn't time the drinks right, or I started too early, or I didn't eat enough. Uh, but no, I don't have a problem with alcohol. I just had that one incident. Um, After that, I guess I was 29 or 30 years old. I got a job that I absolutely loved. It was and I had what now I consider the naive hope that it was a 1 year appointment. Um, they didn't promise me any more, and I had the naive thought, and I tried to enact it, that if I performed above expectations, that somehow, some way, the people with the checkbook would find a way to keep me. Uh, and so I did that, and guess what? The year was up, and they said, we'd like to keep you, we don't have the money. And I took that very, very hard. Um, so hard that I really got into a very negative mindset that perhaps a child who's 6 years old might get into. Life's not fair. I'm being treated poorly. Um, there was a lot of stress. I don't know what I'm going to do now to make a living. Um, and that's not fair either. Certainly, I'm not asking for $1 million salary. These people could find the money. Maybe they're lying to me, and on and on and on. I went and had a checkup with my doctor, and he didn't like the signs of stress that I was exhibiting to him, and he had a pretty holistic outlook, I guess, back then. And he said, "I want to have you go see a psychiatrist to deal with the stress because it can, over the long term, can affect your physical health. And I want that addressed now rather than later." So I said, okay. So I went to see this psychiatrist. We talked a little bit, and towards the end of that session, he said something that gave me relief. He said, "I want to give you a little medicine to take the edge off." I'm here to tell you right now, I still have that edge, what I call the edge. It's sort of a low grade anxiety, discomfort, restlessness, irritability, discontent. But when he said those words, I already started to feel better. And I asked him a little bit about the medicine. He said, it's not really going to adversely affect anything. You're going to be able to work just the way you work. Your relationships are going to not be affected. You'll sleep maybe better than you have, but you're not going to wake up in the mornings groggy or anything like that. And best news of all, it's not addictive. And I'm giving you the lowest dose I can. Now, this man had all kinds of certificates and licenses on the walls of his office that led me to believe this guy knows what he's talking about. I trusted him. So I went and got that medicine. And he was right. It took the edge off. And as far as I could tell, it didn't adversely affect major functions of my life. And there was on every pill bottle, there was a bright orange warning label with drawings of droopy eyes, going down like this. And it essentially said, don't take alcohol with this stuff. And it'll magnify the effect. So I was very proud of myself. I didn't drink while taking that medicine. Oh, I'm guessing it was maybe 3 months, 4 months, something like that. And guess what? The edge started to come back. And this psychiatrist was not going to give me any more refills except once a month. And he wasn't going to up the dose. So what to do? This edge is getting worse. I'm not going to steal drugs. I'm not going to go to a pharmacy, and do that, or buy other drugs on the street. So the warning label that alcohol will magnify the effect stopped being a warning and started being an invitation, a rather seductive one. So I started a chemical experiment on myself and started to drink a little bit again, a little bit. And over time, the little bit became more than a little bit. And then the drinking became a considerable amount. And then it became a lot. Long story short, I drank and took this medicine for 9 years. Now, I continue to see the psychiatrist at least once a month because I wanted that refill. I was vaguely aware of that, but I thought, he could help with the stress management and my negative attitudes and my restlessness and irritability and discontent. And we talked about, all kinds of things. We talked about mommy and daddy and bosses and my wife. And over those 9 years, I had a wife and 2 children that were born. This was in the 80s. So we talked about all those kind of things. He never asked me about drinking alcohol. I'm guessing he assumed I followed the warning label and didn't consume it. And I wasn't going to bring it up to him because I didn't want to distract him. I thought we're at a major breakthrough, and I don't want to get off the rails with that. I want to keep going with this. So I didn't bring it up. And over those 9 years, as the alcohol consumption kept increasing, continuing with the take the edge off stuff, familiar story to any of you been around a lot. I became increasingly depressed, increasingly angry, increasingly impatient. My wife bore the major brunt of that, I think. But anything that happened that I didn't like, I always found something or someone to blame. Never the drinking. Never the drinking. I had a job for part of that decade where I got to travel, and I didn't really like it in terms of not being available with my kids a lot, but I did really like it that the alcohol cop, aka my wife, was not around. I found that she could be a real buzz killer, asking me, are you drinking again? How much are you drinking? You're drinking too much. I think you got a problem. Uh, and I didn't like that. And my solution to that is just to keep drinking more. Um, I don't want to make this a drunkalog, but a few incidents I'll share. Um, I got in this habit of coming home from work, having a couple of drinks, uh, not eating with my children and my wife, uh, and sometimes putting my kids to bed and getting increasingly impatient when they ask me to keep reading bedtime stories because I uh, wanted to get back to the drinking. And I would do that and then invariably pass out on a couch downstairs. And one night, well, I would pass out then and then I'd wake up about 2 o'clock in the morning. Guess what I needed? A few more and drag myself up to bed. But one night I was awakened while I was on the couch by my alcoholic cop wife who was screaming and yelling at me something about my drinking. And I didn't want to scream back at her. So we had a little intercom in the house. And I thought I was being a really thoughtful dad. I turned off one of the speakers and turned on another one. I turned off the speaker that were in our kids' bedroom. And I turned on the one that was in my wife's and my bedroom, or so I thought. And I proceeded to call her all kinds of nasty names, obscenities, etc. And when I went outside, it was the next day or the day after that, whenever it was, I saw my neighbor looking at me very strangely. And I then realized what I did was turn on the intercom to an outside speaker. So they heard this whole argument. Now, that's not a real low bottom in my opinion, but I brushed it off. I wasn't very mechanical anyway. There was a period of time where I literally became a closet drinker. What I mean by that, we had a walk-in closet. I had things like a vacuum cleaner, light bulbs, and my liquor. I was a big bottle guy. This was before Costco, but I wanted to make sure I had enough and not run out. And those were all in this closet. And my drinking progressed to the point where, excuse me, I no longer used glasses. I just drank from the liquor bottles. So I went in there, and I would always mention to my wife, I said, "Oh, I got to get another light bulb." And there was a period where I did that too much, and she said, "Why do you keep getting light bulbs?" And I said, "I think there's some kind of, we got to get an electrician out here. We got some kind of systemic electric problem because these light bulbs keep going out." But no, what the real problem was my alcoholism, which I was totally blind to. Anyway, one of those times, I went in the closet, and at the worst possible time, my 6-year-old, she was 5 or 6-year-old daughter, opened the door. The worst possible time where the vodka bottle is like this, and I'm chugging it. And she says, she starts screaming, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, Daddy's drinking out of the bottle in the closet." And I just reacted and slammed the door. She stubbed her thumb for a bit. She starts crying and screaming. And of course, my wife reacted to that not so well. But that was just another adventure on the alcoholic path. There was one more that I don't want to forget. You may not want to know, but I don't want to forget. Of course, we don't bring up religion in AA, right? That could be very divisive. Um, and having said that, I was raised a certain faith, um, but and I identify with that faith to some degree. But I don't observe any of the holidays. I don't go to the house of worship. Actually, have had problems with the organized form of that faith for a long, long time. But one night when the alcohol cop is arguing with me about my drinking, I had just had it, and it popped into my head. Wait a minute, I remember that textbook from school. It was a abnormal psychology textbook, and there was a chapter on alcoholism and drug addiction. And there was a study in that textbook, a scientific study that looked at the prevalence of alcoholism among different groups, different religions, different countries, different ages, and so on. And I remembered in that study, they had data that cited that people of my faith had a very low incidence of alcoholism. So I was going to tell her, I was going to set her straight. So I marched down and got that textbook, stuck my chest out, and said, look, you know enough about scientific research. Look at here. Look at these numbers, okay? You're saying I'm an alcoholic? Look at the percentage. So I only say that to say my religion became extremely important at that moment when it really never was. So alcohol was really hijacking my mind. It was hijacking my life. And it was so cunning and powerful, baffling too, that I was clueless. It was always something else. I got hundreds of stories about that, which I'm not going to do, but I was blind to it and stupid, I guess. That's a powerful thing, to have control of my life, and I have no clue. No clue. And never would I say, well, maybe my drinking has something to do with this. No. And whenever the alcohol cop brought up my drinking, in one way or another, I got extremely defensive and sometimes offensive, certainly verbally abusive. And it never occurred to me, again, I was blind and stupid. If drinking's not a problem, why am I getting so upset with her? Why don't I just say in a calm voice, I don't agree with you? That never occurred to me. I think the area of my life that was most profoundly affected by my disease was our marriage. I was self-employed then, so I didn't have a boss, putting the pressure on. And I learned the hard way when she would ask, I think you're drinking too much tonight and you're slurring your words. I don't give advice in AA. I'm not in a position to do that. But I remember one time when she said that, I said, well, what do you mean I'm slurring my words? Well, I think you may need to get your hearing checked. I was always trying to put it on her, too, that she was crazy. She was hysterical for no reason. We went to marriage counseling. It turned out the woman therapist was a member of Al-Anon. And her husband had been in AA for a number of years. And to her credit, she never pushed AA on me, never gave me her husband's phone number and encouraged me to consider calling him. She just stuck to our marriage. And I don't think she pushed Al-Anon on my wife, but, she did mention it from time to time. So my wife decided she would start going to Al-Anon. I knew nothing about Al-Anon, and but after a period of time, I loved Al-Anon. Why did I love Al-Anon? Because the alcohol cop wouldn't be home for an hour and a half, and so it was 90 minutes of trouble-free drinking. That's what my marriage had come to. My marriage was getting in the way of what I wanted to do, and little known to me at the time what I needed to do. Anyway, it was maybe a month or two after that, after she started Al-Anon. She was still talking about my drinking, some less though. Eventually, she stopped asking me about it, and that was another reason I loved Al-Anon. But anyway, I agreed to go to an AA meeting, and I thought she's probably going to have some Al-Anon friends there reporting back to her that, whether I showed up or not. Uh, uh, that was the level of trust I had for my wife. So it turned out my mission in that was to have the spies report back to my wife and to come back home after that meeting and lie to my wife that I loved the meeting. I can't wait to go to the next one. The truth was I hated the meeting. Hate's a strong word, but I was one of these people that I was afraid somebody would know me, which I laugh at now, how silly. But I was very ashamed of myself and took virtually all the blame for all the problems we had in our marriage. And I had no idea anything about alcoholism. Certainly didn't know it was a disease. But my mission in that first meeting was to do that. And the first thing I heard as I'm walking in this church, coming out of the room of the meeting, it was a little before the start, was laughter. And it had been a long time since I really laughed. Alcohol, I discovered later, took away the sense of humor others have accused me of having, and I believe I have one. And I just, I kind of freaked out. I thought, I can't go in that room. People are having a good time and I'm miserable. And so I ducked in the men's room and faked like I needed to use it. And this big, tall, burly guy with a loud voice was in there, and he goes, "Oh, you're new here?" And he puts his arm around me as I'm at the sink. And I didn't like that at all. My mission at this meeting was the spy should see me. People leave me alone. I go home and lie to her. Well, that didn't even come close to happening. So I left the men's room, go in the meeting. It's a big meeting, about 100 people, a microphone and a podium in the front. I sit way in the corner, as far away from anybody I could. I look up, and who's at the podium? The owner of the liquor store I was a very loyal customer of. And she kind of looked at me like this, and I was very uncomfortable with that. I later talked to her, and she said, "I was wondering if you would make it." But she never brought up my drinking. She would just, I'd pay and so on. I went to maybe 2 or 3 meetings, and I didn't understand what people were talking about. And I thought that was a problem. I thought, I needed to understand what people were saying. I was kind of a quiet rebel, I think. A lot of times people would say stuff, and I would take on the snarky Dana Carvey church lady character. Somebody would say, "Coming to this meeting is the highlight of my day." And I would say to myself, "Oh, isn't that special?" Very negative attitude, very closed-minded, very critical, very arrogant. But during that time, I considered that I was like on the just visiting space on a Monopoly board. I wasn't joining this thing. I wasn't signing up. I'm just visiting. And it came to be that I thought, I'm drinking too much too often because I'm still not good at stress management. I take small stuff too seriously. I get irritated at high class problems. I get irritated at things I can do nothing about. And I just wish I could go with the flow and be a chill guy without alcohol. And I even, because I tend to be too analytical, there was a period of time there as I'm searching for the reason, not even considering it's a disease that I have, a spreadsheet trying to track my emotional states with how much I drank. And that revealed nothing in that little experiment. Anyway, during the 6 months since my wife started Al-Anon, my disease progressed exponentially. Where the problems got worse, the problems got more frequent. I was literally depressed and angry all the time, sometimes rage, and that self-pity, that terrible, nobody understands me. I dreaded coming home from work because I figured there's going to be some blow up, it's going to be something unpleasant. And I got to be right about that. Real quickly, my wife got invited, she and I, to a New Year's Eve party. I never liked New Year's Eve. I thought, don't tell me when I'm supposed to be happy or why I'm happy. And she was friends with a woman. It was a couple. Who's going to be at this party? People that were nowhere close to people that I hung out with. The headmaster of the most selective private school in the city, the publisher of the major newspaper, big shot lawyers, big shot doctors, people like that. And so I figured, as I often do even still, I'm not going to have a good time at this, but I'm not going to be able to drink the way I want to in front of all these people. So I'm going to grease the skids. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And surprise, surprise, I overdid it because they had drinking. People did drink at this dinner party on New Year's Eve. And after the meal was over, the men retired to another room. The women stayed in that dining room. And these guys are talking about, their days at Harvard and Yale and Princeton and the social issues of the day and things like that. And I was just sitting there drinking, didn't say a word. And then one of the guys said, Bill, we haven't heard from you. What do you think? And I said, what do I think? I think you're all full of shit. You're boring as hell. You think you're something important. And I don't want to listen to your shit anymore. That's what I think. Well, this wasn't a huge party, so everybody heard me. And I shut down the New Year's Eve party before midnight. It was a long ride home with her. And it took another week of drinking. And my wife said something to me that she had said hundreds of times, a lot, usually hysterically, a lot of emotion. I can't stand this anymore, and I don't want to live like this anymore, and I don't want to live you anymore. And I would always arrogantly say, you're just being hysterical. But what she said, it wasn't what she said this time, it was how she said it, which maybe Al-Anon had something to do with it. Was, as they call it, detached. She wasn't hysterical. She wasn't outwardly emotional. She was very calm and said, you either get help or I'm leaving. My first thought was, well, we haven't been getting along for years. Maybe leaving is a good idea. And then it occurred to me, wait a minute, we have these little people, 6 and 4 years old, innocent daughters. Then my mind went to, she's going to hire that lawyer. There was a lawyer where we lived, a domestic lawyer who was the Perry Mason of domestic cases, all female clients. She won every case. And then it occurred to me, well, I don't want a judge telling me when I can see our kids. I maintain to this day, if we didn't have kids, I would have kept drinking and would have died a long time ago. So I agreed, I'll get help. My wife then brought out a cart like they have in libraries with about 14 books about treatment centers and recovery. And anyway, I agreed to go to a 28-day treatment program and chose the hospital, which was my only, at that time, only paying client. Again, I was self-employed. And I picked that hospital, not because of that, but because the staff of that hospital, every one of them was in recovery themselves. And I thought, I think that's probably a good place for me to be and not be with people who wear white coats and have a lot of degrees and stuff like that. So I had to wait for a bed. I told the shrink, I'm going to treatment for this. He said, I want you to go home, get all your bottles, bring them back here, which was really painful. I had just stockpiled a whole bunch of alcohol, brought them back to him. Then he gives me this business card. This guy's name on it says it's a addictionologist. What the hell is that? Me being me, I thought, what kind of quack is he sending me to? I went to see this guy. It was in a pretty rundown neighborhood. His office was pretty rundown. I was a snob and already judged that negatively. And he's the only doctor that ever asked me just one question. Just one. I don't know, maybe some of you have been in that situation, but it was the first and only time that's happened with me. He asked me one question. Do you think you're an alcoholic? And my truth at that time was, well, part of my truth was, I don't know. I told him, I don't know. The full truth was, God, I hope not. I hope the way I drink is because I have some kind of combination of mental illnesses that science and mental health professionals can't even describe, much less treat. But don't let it be the drinking. And he just said, same tone as my wife said to me, he says, oh, okay. And he starts to tell his AA story. How he was chief of staff of a major hospital. He lost his license because of his drinking. And I related for the first time. I didn't realize it at the time, but I think we were having a little AA meeting. I guess it's an example of when the student is ready, the teacher comes. I don't know. But anyway, he helped me more in about 15 minutes than that shrink did in 9 years. And I don't blame the shrink for that. He did the best he could with what he knew, but I don't think, when he kept saying those pills weren't addictive, it wasn't true. But he did send me to that guy. Anyway, in treatment, it was 28 days with a roommate. They did a lot of ego deflating things, which, I didn't like, but I thought, later I realized it was a good thing. You couldn't make phone calls. It was before the internet, so there was none of that. And I had a one-on-one session with one of the counselors. Again, they were in recovery. And he's going over the forms I filled out when we got there. And he has a concerned look on his face. He says, I don't like what I'm seeing here. I go, what are you talking about? He says, well, you state in here you're very analytical. I haven't seen a lot of success with people who are very analytical. I said, what am I supposed to do that? Stop being analytical? He said, well, let me go on. You also say you're very skeptical, and that a certain amount of skepticism is, in your view, very necessary in the kind of work you do, but I haven't seen good results with people who are very skeptical. And the last thing is you say you're introverted. That you prefer to spend a lot of time by yourself. You don't like group activities by and large. You've told your bosses in the past, you want the best out of me, leave me alone, tell me what you want. Don't put me on a team projects or anything like that. And he said, I haven't seen people do well in AA who have such a problem with groups, because AA meetings are group activities. So, at that point, I did want to get and stay sober, but that kind of concerned me. This program took us to meetings, and I, again, not to be overly dramatic, but I hated them. I thought these people are just not helping me at all. When I would hear the word God, I would get turned off. Again, the highlight of my day is this meeting. Are you kidding me? Or I'd see people that had, 20 years and they're still going to these meetings. What's wrong with them? Anyway, at the end of treatment, I was meeting with another counselor about, my plans. What are my meeting schedules going to be? How am I going to do AA outside of this cocoon of a treatment facility? And the phone rang, or he had got a phone call. He had to take another telephone call, so he left the office. And this was back when we didn't have electronic records. I had a big, thick file on me. I think they filled out a form every time I went to urinate. But I said, well, I'm paying a lot of money for this place. I'm going to look in my file. And near the top was a piece of paper, and it said in red ink, resistant to AA. I was outraged. I was outraged because it was true. When they took us to meetings, everybody would come back and say, oh, it was great, and I'm feeling the spirituality and all of that. And I wasn't, but I tried to fake it, and they saw right through me. Anyway, got through with that, went to meetings. I still didn't like them, but I went. I'm not sure why, because I tend to still, if I can, not do things I don't like. I think I was afraid not to go. I had such a negative attitude. Somebody gave me a big book, and not even opening it, I had a negative attitude. I looked at it, I said, well, it's not that big. Why do they call it that? If the title's misleading, I can't trust what's inside. Or people would introduce themselves in meetings as a grateful alcoholic. That's the oxymoron of the millennium. Grateful, I hadn't felt gratitude for decades. And I was not grateful to be an alcoholic. And I did what was wrong. I was a good negative role model. I did a lot of comparing instead of identifying. So somebody got 4 DUIs. Well, that didn't happen to me. Somebody whose parents were alcoholic. Well, that didn't happen to me. And people would laugh at terrible things. Like somebody would say, I could wrap my car around the tree. Ha, ha, ha. These people are crazy. Well, I was the one who was crazy. I didn't like the slogans. The slogans were simple. And in the world I was in, simple was not good. Not good at all. The most severe criticism one could get of their work is, that's too simple. So I had all of that, but I kept going. There was 2 people that particularly helped me early on. One who said, he resigned from the debating society and he takes what he wants and leaves the rest. That's the obvious, right? But it didn't occur. Oh, because I was hearing all these contrary things too, like think, don't think. Go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And I said, I've got a mild case at worst of alcoholism. I think 9 and 90 is my wheelhouse. So that helped. And then another guy who I judged as a pompous ass came up to me after a meeting, goes, do you think you can not drink the rest of the day and come to a meeting tomorrow? And I said yes. And but I said to myself, yeah, you pompous ass, I'll show you. So I still had that ego. I still had that arrogance. But I was motivated for him to see me at meetings. And gradually, you can guess, the brainwashing or whatever goes on in AA meetings was starting to work. I went from hating meetings to tolerating them. I went from tolerating them to kind of liking them. I went from kind of liking them to really liking them. And I ended up loving them. And I still love them. And how fortunate that is, because it's saving my life. I have no question about that at all, no doubt about that at all. I even called my first sponsor one day and said, "Hey, Dave, AA's not working. I'm not feeling the love. I'm not feeling the connection. I have no idea what people are talking about with this spiritual stuff. I can't stand people talking about God." And he said, "Well, you've been sober 3 months. When was the last time you had 3 months clean and sober since you started ingesting those things?" I laughed. I said, 3 months? Are you kidding? Never. "And you still think AA doesn't work?" I said, "Yes. Aren't you listening to me? You're supposed to listen to me and be supportive as a sponsor." And he hung up the phone. He was most helpful when he hung up. He did that another time when he asked me, "Do you like everybody in AA?" And I thought I was supposed to say yes. And I said yes. And he said, "You're not going to enough meetings, or you're not being honest. When you're ready to be honest, call me back." So those were really helpful. And he really helped me um, at my first fifth step. I'm going to have to end this soon, but uh, he yawned the whole time. I thought I did this killer fourth step, and I was going to blow him away, and kept looking at his watch, tapping his feet, yawning again. "Yeah, yeah, yeah, that's just alcoholism. Yeah, you're just a typical drunk." And my ego didn't like that, but not soon afterwards, I treasured that I became, in my sick mind, an average, typical drunk in AA. And I still try to do that. Um, I ain't special. Um, so AA was working when I didn't think it was, perfectly, and it still does. So I learned that attitude is not everything. And what I think or feel about anything, whether it's AA, sobriety, other people, doesn't matter. Just not drink, go to meetings, and whatever else I need to do to stay away from a drink, that's what I do. So I owe my marriage has gotten better. I still, my children, adult children, still talk to me. They allow me to see my grandchildren. None of that would be possible, and many other blessings that I did little to have. So for this ingrate, I'm very grateful. And I appreciate Glenn asking me to do this. Rest assured he won't again. And I thank you for your time.